We now want to look at the fossil record because I think there's a lot of evidence to be gained, a lot of very interesting things that we can see through that. So Jacob, what does the fossil record tell us about the truthfulness or not of the story that the Bible tells?
I think the fossil record is great evidence, and perhaps one of the detriments to the idea of evolutionary theory and perhaps shows the truth about God's creation. Everyone likes to talk about dinosaurs and dinosaur fossils. We have unearthed thousands of dinosaur fossils, so we know dinosaurs existed. That's not something to argue about. That's true, and we have thousands of their fossils. But according to the evolutionary timeline, the dinosaurs lived up to 65 million years ago, and that's when they became extinct, about 65 million years ago. And according to the evolutionary theory, dinosaurs evolved into modern-day birds. So we have thousands of these dinosaur fossils, and today, 65 million years later, we have birds and all kinds of birds, but what we don't have is the transition fossils. You would think if we have thousands of dinosaur fossils, then we would have that much more of their transitions from dinosaurs to birds, because that's more recent. But we don't have those missing links. And that's just one example. There are many examples of missing links, missing intermediate fossil records of the evolutionary theory. For example, the evolution of the whale. The whale is said to have evolved from a land animal, but there's not a half land animal, half whale. We don't have those missing links. And I have a quote here from Charles Darwin, pretty much the father of evolutionary theory. People view him that way. And I have a quote from his book, The Origin of Species. And he says this: "The number of intermediate varieties which have formerly existed on Earth must be truly enormous. Why then is not every geological formation and every stratum full of such intermediate links? Geology assuredly does not reveal any such finely graduated organic chain, and this perhaps is the most obvious and gravest objection which can be urged against my theory." So Charles Darwin himself, he was honest. He pointed out the fact that the fossil record does not support his theory. And it's perhaps the gravest objection to his theory. And his belief was that soon these would be unearthed, these missing links. Well, he wrote this in 1859, and since then, these missing links have not been found. They have not been found. And so that objection is still true, and I think the fossil record disproves the idea of evolutionary theory. Also, along those lines, I think the fossil record also proves the Bible to be true. And we talked about the flood earlier, the great catastrophe, global catastrophe of the flood. I've read that there's been found more clam fossils at the top of mountains than there are under the sea. They found more clam fossils and marine fossils on these mountains, and people are so perplexed. How did these sea animals and their fossils get at the top of these mountains? Why are they there? Well, the Bible has an answer. The Bible tells us there was a great flood that covered the tops of mountains. And so there's your answer. And I believe that's why you see all these clams and sea animals, their fossils at the top of these mountains, because of the flood.
Again, the world makes sense when you're viewing it through a biblical perspective. The Bible, the creator of mankind, understands, knows history, told us what happened, and when you look at it through a lens, a biblical lens, what we're seeing with our eyes, the evidence that we see, makes sense looking at it through a biblical lens, through a biblical perspective. Where when I look at it through a non-biblical perspective, where I'm sitting in a science class and somebody's trying to make stuff fit into a particular narrative, it's illogical. It does not make sense to me. Again, appears to me that it's all because we don't want to believe there's a God. So we have to try to approach things through that perspective. I want to try to be unbiased as well, but these questions need to be answered. They're real questions. How did the fossil record get at the top of the mountains with marine life? How did that happen? Somebody needs to answer those questions, and I think the Bible answers it for us and explains it, which makes sense to us.